All right, students, we're going to look at percents and what percentages mean and get more in depth about what these percents mean in these word problems that we've been looking at. We've already discussed that a percent is basically a ratio or a fraction that's over 100. So these percent numbers that I have here, 60%, I just rewrote them in case you couldn't see the numbers. 60% of students that were surveyed like rap music. That's what this key over here stands for. 10% like pop, 10% like jazz, 20% like R&B. So with these percents and what these percents mean, this is not the number of students that like something. This is the percent or a portion of the students that chose that kind of music based off of how many students were surveyed. What do I mean? So remember, we've been, I kind of gave you the strategy of, I want to change colors because I don't want that. Gave you the strategy of kind of saying a small circle for a part and a larger circle for a whole, just to kind of give you a visual representation of what a part and a whole. I remember in remembering that a part is always smaller than your whole. And what I mean by that is your whole, remember your whole is your total. I'm going to put W/T. Whole and total, that means the same thing. In this situation, my whole or my total would be the number of students surveyed. Because again, the percents on here is not how many students were surveyed. That's showing you the portion of students that were surveyed, what portion chose that type of music. So the number of students, so I'll just say the number of students, that's my whole. My part would be how many students chose the different type of music based off of these percents that are given. So what do I mean by that? So let me say, I don't want to use 100 because, again, even though a percent is a ratio of out of 100, I don't want you to confuse this 60 as being, oh, well, that's 60 students. It depends on how many students were surveyed. So let's say 300 students were surveyed. That means if this whole circle represents 300 students, you see most of them preferred rap music. But that does not mean that that's 60 students. That doesn't mean I'm putting 60 dots in there to represent 60 students, and then 20 dots in here, and then 10, and then 10 more, because that's not going to equal my whole, which is what I said was 300 students. So what I need to do is use this proportion to figure out or determine what my part is. That's what I'm looking for here. I'm looking for my part. I don't know how many students chose a certain type of music. All I know is the percent of the students that chose that type of music. So if I have a total of 300 students that were surveyed, I don't know how many students chose rap music. I'm going to just use that one as an example. So I know that whatever this number is, 60% of that number, 60% of 300 of that number is going to be my X, is going to be how many of those actual students chose rap. Because all I know is it's 60%. That does not mean 60 students. So again, let me use my proportion, to solve this proportion to determine how many students that is. So let's say I'm going to cross multiply 300 times 60. And because again, I cannot cross multiply 100 times X and get a number and get a product. I'll get another equation, which we will talk about more later, but I want to be able to get a number. So I've got 18,000. Let's think about this, because a couple of you all are doing this on your warm-ups. I only have a total of 300 students that were surveyed. I can't say, well, a part of 300 is 18,000. Because then you're saying 18,000 students chose rap music. We only surveyed 300 to begin with. So remember, your part, and that's why we did the visual representation of the circle, your answer, your final answer has to be smaller than 300. So some of you all are forgetting the second step. Circle that extra number that's left over, 100. Divide 18,000 by 100 and cross my zeros off. I get 180. So what does that mean? That means if I want to draw this out, I would draw 180 students in this red part because 180 students chose rap music, and that's the type of music that they prefer. Now, we're going to do the other one, so again, you can see how these parts are not the percents themselves. The percent, again, is just telling you what portion of those students chose that music. So let's do the 20%, which is R&B. 20, because again, a percent is a ratio out of 100. 20% chose rap music. My whole is still the same. I did not change how many students I surveyed. But I don't know how many students are in this green. I'm going to solve it the same way, multiply. But now I'm going to multiply 30 times 20, which is 6,000. And again, I can't have 6,000 in this circle because I only started off with 300 students surveyed. So I need to use this number left over. That's why I try to make sure I circle it each time because, wait, you're not done. You got to use that extra number. And that is going to give me 60. Because again, if I cross the 2 zeros off, and that's 60. So that means out of 300 students, 20% of those students liked R&B music. That represents, or that part is 60 students. So now I have 180 students that like rap music, 60 students that like R&B music. So now let's look at, now notice jazz and pop are equal. Those percent amounts are both 10%. So whatever I get for one of them is going to be the same for the other because they were both 10%. So 10 out of 100. Again, notice my whole is still 300 because again, I surveyed 300 students. So 300 times 10. Oops, that's an equal sign. There's an equal sign. Don't get that confused. That's an equal sign. Let me just erase it so y'all don't get confused. Bless your hearts, babies. Bless your hearts. So that is 3,000. And 3,000 again. Circle this number that's left over because I'm not done. Because again, I cannot have 3,000 students that like jazz music if I only surveyed 300 to begin with. Divided by 100. And that is 30. So remember, like I said, because these percents were the same, I want to make sure that looks like a 0. Because these percents were the same, that the amount of students were the same. So, again, my whole was 300. That was the number of students that were surveyed. My parts were the number of students that chose that music. I determined that part, I found that part out by using the percent because again, my percent is not the number of students that chose that music. It represents a portion of the students that chose that. Now, I'm going to show you how these parts all relate to the whole. If I add all of my parts, what number should I get? I should get 300. That's the number of students surveyed. So here is 0. 8 plus 6 is 14. 14 plus 6 is 20. And I get 300. So again, everything with these percents, I'm sorry, I don't mean everything, but with these percents, These percents, again, did not represent the number. It represented a portion of the number. So you've got to, once you know what